Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me now?
You haven't seen Phoenix Nights, have you?
No.
No.
How can he not have seen Phoenix Nights?
I saw the first episode and I was like, okay, dinosaurs, just have your own thing.
This is a bit...
It's a 90s thing, isn't it?
90s? It looks older. You're apparently Psychon now.
Psychon?
I'm Psychon.
What the hell? Where the hell?
You can't
Have you got an
type.
iPhone?
No, I've got a Galaxy.
Because I know the iPhone always puts Psychon. Even when I put Simon, always puts Psychon as my name.
What the fuck is Psychon?
I don't know. I'm a cyborg from the planet Zorg, I think.
Are we about ready to begin?
I think so. Nick's going to miss the news roundup, isn't he?
That's fine.
It's really bizarre having a face staring at us like that out of the screen. So,
I just stay like that.
just... Yeah.
Hello, Internet. I am Firebolt.
And I'm the Orbiter.
And today we are joined by a special guest.
Or two, depending on whether or not somebody else's son gets to bed.
Right.
But, go. Simon.
Hello?
Introduce yourself.
Oh, have you got a tag? Or do you just want to be Simon?
No, I'll just be Simon.
Simon.
Cool. So, just get straight up into the...
From the After Dark Podcast Network, has his own podcast. Would you like to promote just now, and we'll give you another opportunity at the end?
Shameless
Yeah,
plug.
it's the Simon Says podcast on the network. It's a journal of my life during the week. So,
Cool.
We have guested on it.
yes,
We have, yeah. Yeah, I forgot about that, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So just get straight into this, I guess. So, news that's happened since the last time. Any news that's particularly on your mind, Simon?
Apart from Boris Johnson being a cunt.
Is he Prime Minister now?
I don't know, what's happening with that?
I don't know. I just saw Theresa May doing an interview the other day as Prime Minister still. I thought she'd gone, but
They're talking about, somebody's talking about taking somebody to court to stop him proroguing Parliament, is it? To get through Brexit with no deal?
Yeah, because that is essentially illegal.
Well, at the moment, they would have to change the law and we would have to basically become a non-democracy for it to...
Yeah, it's funny that...
What are you?
I don't know what your feelings on Brexit
Are you a Ramona
are,
or a... Are you
I'm just letting everything pan out the way it pans out.
Yeah.
There's nothing we can do. It's
Not
all in the
particularly
politicians' hands. So
invested then. I am worried though, because there are some, especially with us being in Scotland, they said that we'd be affected more by a no-deal Brexit, so I am worried about some of the effects, especially with medicines.
Yeah, like you say though, there's not a lot we can do about it. I mean, we may actually get a get-out clause if they decide to push through the no deal, and then obviously Nicola Sturgeon would go for an Scottish independence referendum. But under those circumstances, would Boris Twatface say no anyway? Because he'd probably be...
Yeah, the Tory party, I think, said recently that they have a multi-million-pound war chest to try and stop Scottish independence. Which it
just sounds like to try and break everything up even more, really, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not 100% behind independence, but I'm just sort of at this point, I'm more aligned with the politics of Europe than I am with the rest of the UK, so I'm more happy as being part of Europe than the UK.
What else is happening? There's some tennis going on, isn't there, at the moment?
There was, yeah. I think it's finished now. Longest game ever, I believe.
Somebody said to me a couple of nights ago, "Oh, Federer's doing this, that, and the other." I said, "Oh, is there some tennis on?" Shows how much I follow the news. But
I did see a good meme. Someone's been watching tennis and they've gone and they want to go and watch a Quentin Tarantino film now.
Oh, what's that new one that's coming out? Something. I saw the trailer for it.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah, that's the one. I saw somebody burning a load of Nazis with a flamethrower in the trailer.
That sounds very Tarantino.
Yeah. Saw that The Dead Don't Die the other day.
Yeah, I noticed you went watching that.
That's a weird film. It's. Do you like Wes Anderson stuff? Do you know?
I don't really know, but it's one of those films. It's got Bill Murray in it, and I like Bill Murray.
Yeah,
but it's also got Adam Driver in it, but the trailers look good.
Yeah,
you came out mixed.
I think I would like to see it again now that I know what to expect. But most of the time, going through it the first time, I was like, "What the fuck?" I'm not sure if this is supposed to be genius or it's just really bad. But I think I think it's supposed to be the way it is. It's just I think on a second viewing, I'd be more kind of I know what this is now. So I think it is a good film. It's worth seeing. But anyway, what else is in the news?
The UK ambassador to the US got fired because I think he basically said Trump was inept in private.
Yeah, so someone's leaked the memos or something, so it's caused a massive backlash.
But still a good ambassador, I think. It's just Trump doesn't like people that actually say anything truthful whatsoever, so it feels like the world's just more and more just getting used to, just do what this screaming toddler says, because otherwise he's going to maybe declare war on someone. We don't know who, but maybe.
That could segue us nicely into the subject of today's podcast.
Although I did see some people circulating, I think, saying that they want Nigel Farage to do it instead, and just like...
To do what?
The ambassador to the US job.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
No. I'll do it.
You'll sacrifice yourself.
No. That would be... No, all kinds of wrong, I think.
Yeah, because I know they're very friendly. I think their campaigns are pretty connected.
The only thing I can see Nigel Farage being any good at is serving behind a bar.
No, he wouldn't even...
No, I think he'd be on the other side of the bar drinking the stuff, not actually serving. I don't think he can even do that.
It just reminds me of that story when David Cameron left his kids in a pub.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Yes, about three and a half hours or something. And only realised when he got halfway home that he left his kids at the pub.
Chaos with Ed Miliband. Anyway, before we get too...
What is that you're drinking, by the way? It looks it's very...
I took it out of the can. It's a Blue Moon.
Belgian what?
It's a Belgian white wheat beer.
Oh, right, okay. So they're just speaking about that before. For some reason, I thought Blue Moon was some kind of wine thing.
No, it's a Belgian blue wheat beer.
Why?
So, well, it's not blue, but Belgian white wheat beer.
I notice you have lots of Stormtrooper heads behind you.
Yeah, it's me Star Wars helmet collection.
Sorry.
Yeah,
I'm not laughing about you having a Star Wars collection. I'm laughing about it being a helmet collection. But
yeah. Well, that's to go somewhere. No, I like collecting little things, and that's one of them. And I've got a Marvel comic collection in front of me as well, and I've got all sorts everywhere. I'm just building a Terminator, a T800 at the moment as well.
Which one's that?
The Terminator, the original Terminator.
Oh, right. One. Yeah. So, what was the liquid metal one in T2? Is he a
T1000?
1000, yeah.
Yeah.
You haven't seen that, have you?
No.
Have you seen any of the Terminator films?
I think I've seen parts of 2.
How many are there now? There must be about 5, is there?
Yes, there is 5. After 2, forget about it. Don't watch any of them.
Yeah, first 2 are kind of...
But they're re-releasing, they're doing a new one, and it's based straight after Terminator 2.
Oh, right, okay.
James Cameron's doing this one. So, he's going back. It's kind of forget about what's happening in 3, 4, and 5, and going straight to Terminator 3.
I can't remember what did happen in... I think I've only seen one of them. Salvation, was it?
Well, Salvation was John Connor a little bit older.
Yeah.
It was like a 20-year-old.
Yeah.
T3 was Rise of the Machine.
Oh, yeah.
And then there was this new one where John Connor ended up being a Terminator and came back in time, and just leave it at that.
Anyway, what are we talking about today?
We are talking about children.
Okay. In what sense?
Well, I guess it could be aspects of. I don't know. I feel like just to start us off, would you classify me as a child?
Well, this is the bit where we define what we're talking about, and I think we should split it up perhaps, because there's lots of different definitions of child, isn't there? There's under 16s. There's, I mean, like, I'm my mum's child.
But I mean in terms of, like, so what society would view as a child.
So we're defining this episode talking about basically minors then.
Well, yeah, but in terms of alcohol, although I am drinking right now, I would be considered a minor. But in terms of marriage and sex, I'm not considered a minor.
Although in England, you would have to, for marriage, you would have to have parental consent.
But do you still have to have that?
I think so. Is that still the same in England?
I'm not too sure.
I know they used to.
Too sure.
I knew they used to elope to Gretna Green, didn't they, to get married?
I think they still do.
Yeah.
I think they still do actually now.
Because it's just over the Scottish border.
Yeah. But I would say personally, I mean, it's sort of this weird state of flux where for some purposes I am considered a child and for some purposes I'm not, both in terms of what I'm allowed to do but also just how generally people treat me.
I'm a child.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but that's a different matter.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from, because listening to you, like most of the time I've always listened to you, you don't come across as a child. The way you speak, the way your mannerisms are, the way you talk. But in the eyes of the law, as they say, if you're 16, you're still technically classed as a child.
It's all.
So it's all what people make their mind up, really.
It's all fucked up round about that age.
Because we're listening to you before actually physically seeing you. I would never have thought you were 16. The way you come across the podcast, I would say you're at least 20.
Is that a good thing?
You sound like an old fart.
No, not your voice, but the actual way you present yourself. Well, vocally, should I say?
I'm not sure. I think I am a bit unusual for my age.
Sorry.
But what?
A bit unusual.
Yeah, but like.
I think we all have, because we're sat here on a Sunday night talking to people.
True, yeah.
I think I've. Like,
I don't think people actually realise we've never actually met before, have we? We put that across. We've never actually. We have actually technically met online.
There's only one other person that's been on any of the podcasts I've been on, who I have met other than Theo. Well, I have to say that obviously my wife, Star Stuff, and
I've been waiting for that.
Oh no, I'm overusing that to fuck. Yeah, it's Pate. I don't know if you remember from. What did we do with him? The Dutch guy.
Episode 30.
Yeah, was it medicine?
Oh, I can't remember. Science.
He did
science.
Yeah.
Science, that's the one.
He did podcasts, immigration and science.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because I mean, I put an invite out to the network for people to join in, and I think you're probably the only one that hasn't got children, are you? Oh, apart from the younger crowd, like Luke and Amanda and that lot.
I have no children. No.
So,
well, I thought the reason that you were on was because you did. Like, that was the only thing that I was banking on knowing anything about.
He doesn't have children, but they fascinate him.
Yeah. Oh, I'm a big. As you can probably see behind me, I'm a big child myself. So.
That's true.
Just be careful with what you say.
Should always be careful what you say. All of this incriminating stuff will be online long. I wonder what happens when you die to your podcasts. Like,
don't know.
If somebody doesn't actually actively take them down, do they just stay there forever?
I know Apple has some really weird things in their contracts, like in their terms and conditions. Like, they have provisions for the event of a zombie apocalypse with what happens to iTunes and stuff like that.
Okay.
At least someone's thinking about it.
Yeah.
Really, I'm not sure how much of that was for a joke or how much of just Apple employees genuinely believe this is something that will happen.
So, I mean, like, putting aside the sort of legal aspects of what's defined as a child, because obviously that varies. For me, I think I would tend to think of a child in that sense as being up to kind of teenage years. I suppose when you're sort of starting hitting puberty, because then that would be kind of, for me, that would be more of a youth or a teenager.
Right.
Like, I mean, teenagers don't like being called children, do they?
No. So. I think probably actually a good way of defining it is actually how consent is defined in... I'm not sure if it's the same in English law, but I know it's this in Scottish law because they teach us this in PSE. Is if you're under 13 and have any sexual relations whatsoever, that's completely illegal. But if you're between the ages of 13...
But does that include if the other parties are under 13 as well?
I don't know. I think it's generally done by whoever is seeking consent in that situation.
And if there's nobody over 13 involved, then there's nobody that can be held culpable either. So.
Well, it might be whoever is meant to be those people's guardians that would be held culpable. Or whoever was seeking consent in that situation.
What's the whole thing about the Convention on the Rights of the Child? There's a thing in European law, isn't there, on the Convention of the...
I think that's the UN, but...
UN, is it?
But basically, a lot of people have very warped attitudes as to what the human rights of children will be, to the extent in quite a few countries, children have less rights than animals.
Now, I don't know what stage the law is at in England now with corporal punishment.
I don't think it's allowed in schools, but I think it's still legal to have like smacking.
But I
think it's gone to. I think it is illegal. Even parents can't do it now.
Yeah, I thought that was the case in Scotland.
In public, you can actually be done for assault. I believe. So,
which I actually totally agree with, but it is something that has changed quite quickly.
Yeah.
In terms of, and rightly so, in my opinion, but it's not that long ago that it was.
I definitely noticed it.
Perfectly acceptable to kind of.
I don't know how much I mentioned this on podcast, but I am myself autistic, just mildly. But it caused problems with anger management when I was younger. It still causes social difficulty, but I've mostly got that under control and just spin it as me being confident in my weirdness.
Eccentric.
That's the word I was thinking as well. But yeah, no, that's if you're happy with it.
But I know when I was you probably got this more as the parent, but I did pick up on it. Different people would have very different attitudes to how a misbehaving child should be treated, because I was acting up a lot, and you knew that being really aggressive with me, because you tried it, wouldn't work.
Yeah, I mean, when you say I tried it, I mean, the standard kind of shouting parent thing, you've got, once you get to that point of sort of heightened, trying to kind of impose authority, you've got nowhere to go if it's not working. And I think it takes the realization, 'cause in most cases, it kind of does work to a certain extent. If you start shouting at a child,
I don't think it's very healthy, to be honest.
No. But I suppose in that sense, it's
because I know a lot of people have pretty strained relationships with their parents because of this sort of. But I think parents always have to be right sort of attitude.
I think it very much depends on the situation, though. I mean, if your child's about to run out in front of a car,
yeah.
But it also depends on what social area you're in, because I was brought up just outside of a council estate.
Yeah.
And the attitude there was it was usually always single parents.
Right.
And you find that the single parent was more aggressive towards a child
Right.
to get the child to come in or do something, because they just had no control.
Yeah.
Because there was only one parent.
High stress.
So whether it's I mean, two parents makes a difference. Could do. I don't know, but I saw that more over in where I was, with it being a more run down area. You did find that they did shout a lot and scream at the kids a lot more, and did smack them on the street just to give them a bit of.
It's like a vicious circle, though, isn't it? Because it's like with that kind of level of sort of shouting and stuff going on all the time, it's almost like it loses its kind of. I mean, most of the time, I tend to. I think, do I stay calm most of the time?
You do. And
I get stressed sometimes.
Even when you get stressed out, I mean, I notice it's always. You just sort of switch into this mode where you go, "I beg your pardon," and then just like act all authoritative.
Yeah.
And you're just being a complete knobhead usually, but
you say that.
You sometimes have a point, but you're still being a knobhead about it.
Yeah. but so what? What are you trying to say?
Nothing.
Yeah, but I usually feel like it's justified in those cases. Like if I've just done my third load of washing up for the day and you haven't done any since yesterday, and you think that oh well I did it yesterday, is like, okay then.
That is in a different context because it was that
We're
someone else.
Family row now.
No, it was that someone else.
I'll leave you to it.
Was meant to do it. Like I'd dried up what was already there.
We should move on because this is going to turn into a discussion of who. What do you mean meant to do the washing up? We're all meant to do it, but yeah, go on.
Like they were told to do it and they didn't.
Yeah, I think that's one of the frustrating things though, as a parent is, I mean, you'll know, even though you haven't got kids, you'll know that you kind of you share responsibility for the house presumably, and like
yes.
if you can see that something needs to be done, you'll get on and do it.
I usually get shouted at because I usually don't bother doing it.
But you know what I mean? It's like that. It does get a bit tiring to have to kind of tell people to do it all the time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
like doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just find it easier to just get on and do it myself. It's just kind of. But I'm going to be stressed about it then, though.
Fair enough. You don't have to be an asshole about it.
Yeah, I do. It's got all quiet now.
Right. Okay.
I'm just checking if Nick's been on Messenger, but no. Yeah. He's trying to get his son to bed. The irony.
Yeah.
Right. I did notice, like, in relation to me, and a lot of people seem to have this attitude even now. I think it has gotten better. I'm not sure particularly the influences there. I know since then smacking has become illegal in Scotland.
I think it was illegal here before it was illegal.
Yeah, but I know that was I think after sort of maybe around about the time that I had a lot of anger management issues.
There's a weird thing in Scottish law as well, which I don't think we're on top of, which if both parents die and there's no will in place, the kids, even if there are other relatives alive, like your grandparents or whatever, the kids become wards of the state rather than automatically being, having guardians of the sort of next of kin, if you like. So if me and Mum both died, because we don't have a will at the moment.
I don't know, it might be...
Then...
In some families, it might be safer to do it that way.
Yeah, well, I think that's probably the idea. I don't know how whether or not you just automatically then go into the kind of adoption system. Mind you, you're 16 now anyway, so it probably wouldn't...
Yeah.
It would be a different situation, but that is worrying though, that there's that there are so many people that maybe don't even know that they assume that if they kick the bucket that their kids are going to go to the in-laws or whoever. But no, the government step in and go, right, that's their hours now.
But I did notice that a lot of people had this attitude of just be more strict with them, as if they didn't really think much.
Yeah, it's not. We had a. I suppose we were at the back end of the sort of diagnosis. You'd been diagnosed when we first went to Florida, hadn't you?
Yeah.
And at that point, we had some cards printed out that you could have on you to hand to members of the public if if you had what's known as a meltdown, because people think that because your child's doing that kind of behaving that way and you're not kind of disciplining them, they think that you're being a bad parent, if you like, because you're not sort of trying, you're not keeping your child in check, if you like, in order. But and we could do with addressing this if Nick did get on, actually, because
it feels like that's a generational thing, because I've personally felt the same in my 20s.
Right.
That's what I felt when I saw a child playing up in a supermarket.
Yeah.
And the parent's just standing there. I think, well, you're a bad parent. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Because that was never told to us when we were growing up. We just saw that's a generation thing of the 80s and 90s where I grew up. It was
How old are you?
I'm 36.
Right. So you'll be the same age as Nick then, roughly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, a few months.
Yeah.
A few months older. So it's. I don't know whether the predicting the same. It might be about different areas as well. It could be how the society got across to you. Because if I saw a child just screaming in the middle of a supermarket, when I used to work in a supermarket, I used to see it all the time as well.
Yeah, you'd assume
you just see the
it's just bad behaviour.
Yeah. You never. But now it's more to light about the autism and children's behaviours being affected by different forms of autism, which is now more educated and more put out there that people understand.
What do you think about, obviously, mental health issues like that across the board, I think are better addressed now, but there's also different pressures now in society, especially for, I don't know whether it's worse for kids or for, I'm thinking specifically about things like phone addiction. And this struck me, actually. I was sat in the green room at the Sound of Music that I was doing this week, and I thought, and there was like maybe 8 or 10 of us all in the room, and most of us were adults, sort of middle-aged, and it's just completely silent, and everybody's just looking at their phones. And you're like,
conversation.
That is. I mean, in a similar kind of thing, maybe say 20, 30 years ago, everybody would have been sat smoking.
Right.
And I wonder if it's the same kind of thing. It's just that kind of. I mean, it's an addiction.
It's not as bad for your health, at least.
No, but there are different. I'm wondering whether or not children who grow up in the world that has that technology. Do you think they would be better adjusted to use it responsibly then?
Better, but that's compared to people that aren't adjusted at all to it, basically. I'm not necessarily talking about your sort of age, but I definitely notice it when older people are complaining about young people always being on their phone, and you actually see them on their phone more often. I think it's internet literacy as well.
Yeah.
I think they're the sort of younger people are able to actually use it to find new friends as well.
Social media's
I say that, I'm not sure if you'd quite say friends, but we met online, so...
Yeah. Well, we met through mutual interest, wasn't it, really?
I guess.
That's where it helped. It seems to think of you chat over...
Biting your nails.
Fuck off. Sorry.
Your finger started bleeding earlier because you were biting your nails. So.
That was last
I do exactly the same. Don't worry.
They have a go at me now because last year one of my fingers got infected and it blew up like a balloon and there was all green pus coming out of it.
Yeah.
And...
Well, you're a piano player, so you should know better.
Where was I?
I feel like I'm the parent in this relationship.
Suits me.
Vice versa.
I've lost my thread now. I was going to say something and you've completely derailed me.
if you haven't got any other threads to throw out there, quickly, because I know there is a bit of controversy about this, and to be honest, I'm amazed as to why. Kids learning about LGBT relationships in school.
Yeah.
Because there's still protests going on outside some schools in Birmingham, I think.
Yeah, well, when I grew up with that kind of thing, there was no education about it at all. I don't know if it's the same for you, but there was nothing about that.
Well, to be honest, there was nothing at all about relationships. It was all the biological side. There was nothing about.
We got a little bit of the relationship side.
Yeah, I think I noticed.
Plus the physical side.
I think I noticed when we got onto like the sort of when I was in the sixth kind of later teens, towards the end of school. It was coming in more into the kind of sort of personal and social development kind of classes, if you like. But I think there's a lot more of that now. And to be honest, if you're going to do all of that now, you've got to include every aspect of it, because it's not just a question of. I mean, I think parents that are against it are maybe thinking, well, you're educating my child into things that they might not otherwise think about being. That's their worry. I'm not saying that that's justified, but it's as much an issue of, for me, that if there's going to be people of different orientations around them, then they should be aware of that as being an option, and so they're not treating them as if there's something wrong.
Meant to try and prepare you for living in the real world with other people. And it would make sense to educate people about all types of people, because really just trying to learn that from TV and other media, you would get a very warped idea of what gay people are like.
I mean, it does seem to me that there are a lot more gay, lesbian and bisexual and transsexual, all the different LGBT things. There seem to be a lot more of them, but I don't know whether or not that's because there are, or just because they used to stay hidden. Well, they didn't used to even admit it to themselves.
Yeah, but it used to be illegal to 1987, was it?
Yeah, that's true.
Which is still pretty recent if you think about it.
Yeah,
not that long ago.
1967.
No,
I'm sure it's the 80s. It was a question on the chase and it came up.
We've had this discussion before in. It's just going to get Google open.
You have a look at it.
In one of our, I think it might have been our gender episode. Actually, I'm not sure. But
I believe it was quite late.
When was homosexuality decriminalised? Yeah, definitely. It was definitely a lot more recent than feels comfortable.
Yeah, I think it's 1967. In Scotland, it was 1980. And later became amended in the Sexual Offences Act of 2003.
Yeah,
I think where I'm hearing it from. Yeah, it was the act bit that you were saying about it. It was still not changed in law or something, right? But
yeah, I think it was to do with. I think it's Section 28 or something along those lines, because even when it was decriminalised, you had to be 21.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, I remember thinking that was a bit off. It's like, well, you can't, you're either saying that there's equal rights here or you're not. You can't just say, well, it's all right as long as they're over 21. It's like, that's just as double standard as not allowing it at all, But I notice it does say it decriminalised homosexual acts in private between two men, both of whom have had to attain the age of 21. So does that presume that before that time, that between two women it wasn't?
It was actually legal between two women before that, and I think that's mainly because these laws were written by men who would probably either not think about lesbians or actually be turned on by them, so they would want it to be legal.
It's a weird world now, though, isn't it? I mean, like the whole... has that thing happened with the porn block thing yet? That's been put
No, it's been put back. It's probably never going to happen because it's unimplementable.
Yeah.
But speaking of that, the idea behind that was actually to try and stop kids from viewing porn. Any views on that yourself?
I used to go and get the magazines from the shop when I was 12.
Did they sell them to you?
No, well, I did look quite old for my age.
Right.
12.
Yeah.
I used to smoke at the same time as well, so I used to be able to buy cigarettes.
That used to be a lot easier to do. I mean, like, I remember at the age of 14, 15, being able to go in and buy a bottle of vodka from an off license.
You always find the certain shop that used to sell you. That's why I used to try each different shop, and there was always one that sold.
Yeah.
So that's what we used to do.
But I mean, that was back when. I mean, when I remember late teens, there was a pub in Rushden where I used to live that was actually nicknamed the Youth Club because there wasn't anyone in there over 18. You know, it's like.
Well, I used to drink in the pubs at 16. I was playing darts at the time, and it was a landlord who said to me, he knew how old I was, and he was willing to serve me alcohol because he thought it was reasonable.
Well, they didn't used to enforce it that much, did they?
No. It's gone like 20 years ago now, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you could probably reasonably argue that it's probably better now that they do some enforcement because sort of figuring that out on your own is probably not that great. But then
it's weird now though that, I mean, you reach the age of 18 here and you can go to the pub and stuff, but then you go over to America and you've got another 3 years before you can have a drink over there, you know. And
I don't know whether they seem to have more of a problem over there than we do over here, I think.
Yeah. I think that's to do with prohibition.
Well, I'm talking about the youth side drinking to excess. We do have people over here binge drinking.
Yeah.
When they're 18, but Americans at 18 when they can try and get a drink, they'll do it, and they'll do it a lot more worse than what I've seen.
But it's always it's that forbidden fruit thing, isn't it? It's always more attractive when you.
Because the prime example is Halloween Horror Nights.
Yeah.
We see 18-year-olds Brits. They're fine.
Yeah.
You see 18-year-old Americans and they're throwing up everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
So even though they enforce the 21 age a lot more strict over there, they still find a way.
They were pulling them out of the lines and stuff, weren't they?
Yeah.
Although I do know there have been problems with Brits going over to like Ibiza and completely binge drinking.
Yeah, that's a 2000 thing. That thing, 90s, 2000, the club 18 to 30s reputation.
I think they still do it in various places where just Brits will go over there for a cheap holiday, binge drink, and all the locals are just like, well, just calm down. Just
that took over
normally.
from Benidorm, didn't it?
Yeah. Well, I never actually did that kind of thing. My first holiday was to Benidorm with my dad. So
yeah.
But my first proper holiday was with Julie.
Right.
That was when I was 18. I've been with Julie since I was an 18-year-old. So
right.
We've had we had couples holidays rather than young binge. Yeah. Absolutely smashed holidays.
Yeah.
But we used to go. There used to be areas like my dad used to live in Corfu, and Cabos was a no-go area.
Yeah.
If you weren't that kind of person, because it was just people getting up at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
I do remember
till 5 o'clock in the morning
going to Magaluf, and we got one of these sort of night flights, and the coach would take us to the hotel, and we'd be arriving like 2-3 in the morning to book into the hotel. And the first thing we saw when we drove down the main strip on the way to the hotel was people just lying in the gutter. Basically, it was just like. Standard.
But I think that's also down to what they've been brought up like. Because I was never brought up that way. Since me being the child, I was brought up to be responsible for what.
Well, that's it. This is why I've never really stopped the kids from drinking. Even when you were like younger than 10, you had like a little sort of shot glass with some beer in, didn't you? But I just think that kind of the forbidden kind of fruit thing is the worst kind of
sort of. Now I can handle it fairly sociably.
I mean, it's a similar thing when you look at the licensing hours. What are they down now in England? Are they?
It varies from pub to pub.
One
of the locals I go into have got a 3 o'clock license. One's got a 4 o'clock license. Yeah, you can get You can get up to a 24-hour license now in a lot of UK places.
That's much better then, because back when I lived down there, it was 11 o'clock across the board. They used to get an extension to like 1 o'clock on New Year's Eve, but
my local where I used to drink before it got closed down, it used to be 11 o'clock, 11:30 last orders.
Yeah.
And by 11, you had to be out.
It's ridiculous, isn't it, when you think about it? And you'd always get fights breaking out just after 11, because all the pubs would chuck out at the same time, and everybody'd been chucking them back for the last hour, trying to get them all in. And
but when it was a Friday or Saturday, you used to get the lock-ins.
Yeah.
But I think there's more of a sort of nightclub culture now.
Yeah, well, here you kind of the general closing time's about 1 o'clock. Then you move on to there's clubs until like 2 or 3 in Aberdeen, and then after that you move on to the casinos for breakfast. So
talking from experience.
Yeah. Not very often, but maybe once a year I manage that. But I always regret it afterwards.
Yeah, but I think it's like you said. I think it's an educational thing, because I was brought up the same as with Theo. My mum used to give me a glass of wine at Christmas.
Yeah,
I bought the beer on my birthday, all being up from like 11-year-old, and it just slowly made it not like I want to go out and go and do it.
Yeah,
because my mum allowed me to do it, so I didn't have to go out and chase it, as they say.
But relating back to the protests in Birmingham,
the what?
The kids learning about LGBT.
Oh yeah.
Now, I think what they're talking about is just learning the very basics that gay people exist, and I think this is great, because honestly, when I was about 7, I think I heard someone call someone else a lesbian, and I thought it was the same thing as leprosy, because there was just no education on it.
Yeah, but at the age of 7, how much did you know about relationships anyway?
Well, I knew that you guys were together, and I could see other people being together. Gay people aren't allowed to be like that in public without getting at least a little bit of harassment.
Yeah.
Especially back then, because things have changed a lot in like 10 years.
Yeah, I don't think I've got a typical kind of outlook on it, because being quite heavily involved in the music and theatre world, there's a much larger percentage of the population, if you like, that are that way inclined. So it's a bit difficult to kind of gauge what it's like in other areas.
As sort of being educated as love rather than, because quite often gay people are represented as just a sexual relationship, rather than it being equal to that of a heterosexual relationship.
I think men definitely are seen as more promiscuous, aren't they? In gay relationships.
I mean,
are seen that way. I'm not saying that they are.
In general relationships, yes.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is particularly, but I'm not sure if it's more society or biology that does that.
We're just sex mad.
But you'll get different people that are very different. I mean, we've had to invent a word for women that are the same way, nymphomaniac, so I don't think
you wouldn't call a bloke a nymphomaniac. You'd just say he was a hot-blooded male, kind of just a normal bloke.
Basically, he would just be seen as just typical.
Yeah. There's that kind of the whole thing about sort of the word slut, isn't there? And
I think we're getting away from children, though.
Yeah.
But no, it's still, because them kind of words are slung around by children without knowing what they actually are. So,
but there has traditionally been, like, a bloke that slept around a lot would have been known as a stud, wouldn't he? But a woman would have been a slut, you know.
But so, like I say, with the protests, I don't see there being a problem. They should educate the children, let them understand what these people are and what they're doing. It's not unnatural. I mean, it's part of life.
It's very clear. I mean, they'll try and dress it up that they are just plain homophobes, the people protesting this. I think the first day can't remember where it was the first day after. No, it was the first day after Pride had finished. They were still there, and one of the things that they said was, "We don't want our kids to think that this is okay."
But they don't realise.
But that's kind of like the uneducation of when they were younger. They've just not been educated that way, and it's just it's a generational thing that's changing.
Hopefully that
there's a lot changing now. The children now are completely different to what I was when I was a child.
Hopefully it does get better, but
sometimes more education can be a bad thing sometimes, because it can.
But see, I've thought this about, like, I know it's something that we're completely used to, having like men and women's toilets separately, but when you really think about it, it's like, well, why should there be, apart from the issue of having urinals? But obviously, if you had integrated toilets, you wouldn't have urinals anyway. But
I generally see them as a bit pointless, because almost everyone that I talk to,
it's like, you don't
feels
have a separate...
really uncomfortable at the urinals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't,
if I see,
especially if you're next to someone.
I'll go in a queue. There's a line of people. Because I always try and go one, miss one.
Yeah. What do you do if there's like two? There's a gap with just two in between it. Which one do you stand next to? And this happens a lot as well, like at weddings, because I do a lot of weddings, and I'll be sober because I'm playing, but there'll be a lot of drunk people there, and they come in and they'll stand next to you and the urinal next to you, and they'll be like, they'll start up a conversation, and you're like, I just feel really uncomfortable here. We're both stood with our dicks out, and this stranger just trying to ask me how my day's going. And it's like, I'm just trying to relax and have a piss. It's like, nah. But anyway, that kind of digressed a bit. But yeah, you don't have a separate male and female toilet at home. You know, it strikes me a little. It's got a little bit of a flavour of apartheid about it. You know,
not quite, because they're not usually that different in quality. Like apartheid had toilets that were holes in the ground.
But the point about it was about keeping people apart, though. That was.
Yeah, but it's not that they're being treated too differently when they are kept apart, though.
Will they not stem from when going back even further? Because one of the schools that I used to go to had a boys' entrance and a girls' entrance.
Yeah,
it's been there since 1907.
Yeah, there's one of those in Aberdeen.
And there used to be a boys' side and a girls' side.
Yeah,
still the signs are still the actual stone signs are still there
above the doors. Yeah. Yeah,
so
I think that was perfectly normal.
And that's where it's all stemmed from, where you've got your separate everything.
What is that about?
Separated.
What is that about? I mean, because that still happens. You still get all girls' schools and all boys' schools. It's like, I'm not quite sure I understand. I mean, it was perfectly normal in our day. That was fairly standard for a comprehensive school to be all girls or all boys, and it's like, why? What, you're not preparing people for the world here.
Yeah, people have argued that it keeps concentration, but
well, it did at the time. Apparently, it tended to result in better exam results for boys, but not girls when they integrated them together. Girls did better in single sex, but boys did better in mixed.
It's just sort of keep it mixed, because the world isn't going to be that separate. I mean, in the past it would have been, but
this is where I actually think that things like, once you get to the age where you can go to like a further education college, I think you're better off in that environment than in a school sixth form, because you then get mixed with people of different ages as well, which is the arena that you're kind of going into. You know, you're not going to only be with people your age. You know.
Yeah.
This hasn't been that much about children, has it?
No, well, do you want to talk at least a little bit about raising me as an autistic child? I will...
no, not really. I've had enough of that.
What else do you bloody talk about?
Well, I had a bit of a strange thought yesterday, I think, when I was trying to think of ways to talk about this. Obviously, there's different ways of defining what the term child actually is. You've got like sort of child folders on computers, which basically are like it's like a descendant of something that depends on something. A child is a descendant, basically, isn't it?
Right.
If you're not looking at
this is a very weird way.
I know I do that. When you're not talking about children as in defined by law as an age thing, the concept of a child is a descendant of something. So, like, I am my mum's and dad's child. You are our child. He's going to interrupt me now. And
you're
derail
not really going anywhere by the sound.
I am.
Fine, continue.
You're just not letting me. So, in that sense, am I not like the person that this is going to get metaphysical now? The person that I am now, is that not technically, in that sense, the child of my former self? Because without my former self, I kind of, everybody learns from their past experience, don't they?
Right.
So you in the same way that you might learn from your parents, your present self is kind of a product of, or a descendant of, your previous self. So your child self from last year to you, but like my child self from say 20, 30 years ago is almost like the parent of me now, and I'm like a child of myself as a parent.
What are you smoking?
You know what I mean? No, he does. He's okay.
I'm just so confused.
You're genetically identical.
Yeah, but
right. There's concept in philosophy. It's a thought experiment.
Okay.
Ship of Theseus. Basically, I'm not sure who proposed it. Basically, a ship that's over the years gotten worn down and has various parts replaced to the point where every part of it has been replaced. Is it still the same ship? Because your cells,
I know you've said this before,
roughly replace every 6 months. I'm
not talking about in a physical sense. I'm talking about in a behavioural kind of learning sense. I've learned. I am the child of my past experiences.
Right, you don't learn you don't learn directly from your parents' experiences, though.
No, but they teach you things, and you do learn from your own experiences.
But you don't have their perspective exactly when they tell you about their experiences, so it's not the same thing.
But in the same way, I don't have the exact perspective of myself 20 years ago. Now.
Just stop.
Nobody does. You see, if you look back to what's happening 20 years ago, you are looking at it through the lens of 20 years worth of experience. So not only is it not going to be an exact memory.
This is not what anyone means when they talk about the definition of a child.
I know, I'm just exploring concepts because we were running out of shit to say.
Well, I was about to go mention something and you were just like, oh, I'm going somewhere where you're really not.
Well, go on then.
Right.
But Simon might have something important to say. He just tried to say something,
sure.
And you just.
Well, it's mainly like we're saying about where a child's age comes in. Where did holiday companies, and I'm going to say the name Disney, come up with that 12-year-old an adult?
Yeah.
As soon as you turn 12, you're an adult in their eyes. You have to pay full price for everything.
I get the feeling that some of that is about basically how much you eat.
Yeah, but the ticket price. If you're not eating anything with a ticket price, are you?
No, that's true. Yeah.
But being 11 and 12, and then one day, you've not grown that much, have you?
No.
They're probably just wanting to get as much money as they can.
Yeah, but it's not just that, it's also the travel companies. Because I remember I used to be up to being 16 when I was younger. I used to be on my parents' passport, and I used to still get child prices.
Yeah.
My first holiday, I think it was Benidorm. I was 10. I was on my mum's passport. I was a child. Then I went away when I was 14. I was still classed as a child. I don't know when it changed to like now. You're 12. You get it's adult prices.
They probably picked up on the most efficient way to organise age, so that you've got the people that are wanting to give their children an experience whilst they're young and kind of a bit naive, really. They'll get swept up in the magic of it when they're below 12, and then people above 12 are more likely to...
Cynical bastards.
Yeah.
It's like technically you're calling a 13-year-old an adult because you're having to pay for him as an adult.
The other thing is as well, there's certain places as well where you can't buy a children's meal if you're over the age of 12, even though you might not want to eat the whole adult portion.
Yeah, unless you just get it, and especially at Disney, just say my child's over there. That's what I do when I get some stuff for Julie.
But it's like, surely in that sense, it should literally be on the amount of food that you're ordering. It's got nothing to do with how old you are. But it is defining an age, a child, isn't it? Really, and it comes into where do you define the age of an actual child now? I think
of all these different social things.
Maybe they should just like weigh people.
No, because American children would be
adults.
classed as adults. Yeah,
yeah, quite rightly so.
I would be the weight of a 6-year-old over there.
Yeah, we've got some American listenership. They haven't been in touch.
I'm sorry, our dear listeners.
These off.
Yeah.
Right.
I need more beer.
I was going to say, with your dad...
Who are you talking to?
Yours, because I don't know anything about Simon's dad. That would be weird.
Yeah, but you're asking about something, so that would imply you don't know what it is you're about to explore.
Talk about... Because your dad had anger problems.
Uh-huh.
And I know you've said that he usually took that out on my nan, your mum, and your brother.
I should be taking this more seriously than I am, but go on.
Right. Do you want to talk about what it's like growing up like that? Because
it's a difficult one because...
How long was he, around in your
Well, they divorced
household?
When I was 7.
Right.
We basically, it all came to a head when I was 7. My brother was 12, 13. There was an incident where she became aware that it was going to potentially be life-threatening, so she basically just had to get out. And they divorced at that age. So I possibly have less early memories than most people might. I think generally people don't tend to remember much before the age of sort of 4 or 5, do they?
No.
No, I remember
bits and pieces, but
you showed me a picture of when I was maybe 3 or 4.
Yeah,
I remember certain things.
Yeah,
it's like there's a picture of me mixing the plaster that my dad was fixing the back wall in the yard.
Yeah,
the picture's there. I was 3-year-old. When I see the picture, I remember doing it.
So I think everything pretty much rebooted at the age of 7, because not only did they split up, but we moved completely from Leeds down to Northamptonshire, and everything just sort of started again. So
yeah, you just sort of had to get away from that environment.
So it's weird. I don't know. What's it like? Well, but it was before that time. It was normal, but you got no concept of what everybody else is going through. Normal for me then was just being scared most of the time, like every day. But he wasn't home that much, so the fear was more when I knew he was going to be coming home. But because he was a travelling salesman, he wasn't around that much, so that was fortunate.
But
yeah,
later in life, because I know
I was fucked up later in life.
I know,
kind of still am. I think
more recently, because there's more understanding. Because what did he have? Was it bipolar?
Yeah, I think it's called bipolar. It was manic depressive, which I think is the same thing. So he was on like lithium and stuff later on in life. He had all sorts of things because he was diabetic, but he never used to bother to look after it that much. I don't know. It was just an idiot, basically. But he couldn't help it, so we're all idiots, really. It's difficult because if I start talking about it seriously, it gets all serious and kind of. I just prefer to just forget about it and just kind of, To be honest, it was weird though when he did die because I didn't know what to feel. You know, some of it was relief, but you still kind of, what was it? I can't remember what it was I saw it in. That even though somebody's an arsehole, it doesn't make it any easier to grieve for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was in Jessica Jones, I think. I don't know if you've seen that.
Chance to see that.
Season 3.
There's so much to watch these days.
It's like, you know, there might have been a monster, but it doesn't make it easier to, you know, say goodbye, if you like. Because in some ways you kind of, it's almost like you hold on to the blame. You know, you can up to a certain point, I can kind of, even as an adult, I know you're kind of responsible for your own actions, but to a certain extent, you can hold on to the blame unhealthily. I think you can hold on to the blame. You can assign the blame to someone else,
right,
for the mistakes that you make. But when they die, it becomes more obvious that actually you are responsible for your own actions, and you always have been. It's just, it becomes more apparent at that point that it's like, well, you know, just got to move on now.
Okay.
I'm actually scared to death of when my mum goes, when Nan goes, because we've been really close. And I think that's one thing that as you're growing up, you kind of, you know, there's going to come a time when you potentially have to address the Breaking Bollocks audience on your own. That'll be a difficult episode.
I mean, I doubt this podcast will still
It gets a bit morbid now, isn't it?
Well, to be honest, you never actually think of that when, well, bringing it back to children. Children never actually think about that.
No.
I think
I don't know if you ever thought that when at your age, Theo, but I never thought my mum not being there when I was 16.
I do. It's a shitty feeling, so you don't do it often. But it's especially when someone like a more disconnected relative, so like my granddad, your dad.
Yeah, you got used to saying goodbye to.
Yeah, I'd seen him.
Grandparents.
I'd heard about him, but I didn't really know him that well.
But then if you then think about closer grandparents, I mean, you'll notice a lot more when.
The idea was that that made me think about mortality in general.
Yeah.
And then that you sort of imagine what it would be like if someone that you're closer to died.
I don't remember first realising what... Have we done a death episode yet?
Yes, we have.
Thought so.
26.
How the fuck do you know that he's autistic?
I have a good memory.
Yeah. We've got a database with everything on it for the next 2 years, I think.
Okay, that was because we changed the schedule so that we actually have half the videos in the next 2 years, so...
But yeah, that's going to be... it's going to be a weird one. When you find yourself at the top of the tree, if you like.
Oh, yeah. Don't know. I expect to die at like 27, maybe.
That must be a horrible thing as well. People, like parents that have to bury their own kids. That must be.
Well, I had one of my best friend did die when I was 14. That was tough when I was a kid, but because you never got educated anything about that, and whether to do. We never got educated with grief. We never got any counselling.
No.
Or anything. He just suddenly he was a little bit older than me. He was 16 at the time, but he died of meningitis.
Right.
So it was a bit rough. Really. Yeah. But we never got any counselling or anything like that. Or
no, you just to deal with it. You just
had to get on with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was a tough thing, but through what I've gone through in my life, it's actually made me appreciate things more than probably what if he didn't pass away.
It's sort of
because I don't know that should be educated into children these days about death, really.
Yeah,
I don't think they talk about it too much. At least, I think maybe they'd talk about it maybe to do with themes in English or something along those lines. Sort of dealing with death as a concept, but not really in terms of personal development.
But I was thinking, how would you feel obviously you are now of the age where you can be a parent.
Oh yeah, fuck. I mean, I could technically be one earlier, but and I think the law is I sort of touched on this earlier, in Scottish law at least, so if you're 13, 14 or 15, you are allowed to have sexual relations with someone else of that age. It's a little bit grey, I think.
Right, how do I add an extra person to the chat, Simon?
I'm not sure.
I think he just
ongoing
calls in,
call.
doesn't he?
Yeah, if I think if we just send it to him, it should send him an invite to it, like you with me.
Oh, you are useless.
How do I do this?
Start video.
Create new group with Nick, or start video? Start video call. Is that going to be a separate call, though?
Find out.
Oh, shit. I've just... Fuck's sake. Oh, Jesus.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, I mean, I've had worse instructions.
We're just trying... Hi, Nick. We've just lost Simon because I've just tried adding you to a conversation with him. And how do I add another person in here? You're just on audio, aren't you?
I am, because
right.
I'm dark, so you couldn't see.
Oh, hey up. We got an ongoing call with 3 of us now. Did you just do that?
Yeah, I just added him in.
Could you tell us
you
how
have
you
to
did
get
it?
someone else to do it because you're fucking inept. Christ.
Yeah, but see,
Right.
Simon, are you back with us?
I'm back with you audio-wise.
Right. Yeah, Nick's not showing his face for some reason. He's
Well,
obviously ashamed.
Yeah.
You can.
Phantom
I mean,
of the
my-
Opera.
My hair's awful.
Oh, also, that is not good lighting at all.
No, so I told you it's really dark where I am.
He's a
see you.
fucking, you're a Skype ninja, you are. Hey, what's going on?
There we go.
What the fuck? Who did all that? I did none of that.
Wow, it's called technology.
Yeah, but
get used to it, Grandad.
they are both
Right.
they are both more than 10 years younger than me. So
And you are an actual Grandad.
so where were we?
We were
What have we talked about? Quick.
we were talking about your dad, and
Yeah,
then we got onto
death
mortality,
and
all that fun stuff.
there was a point earlier on that I said it would be good to have Nick in on the conversation because we were talking about autism, weren't we?
Yeah, and sort of how other parents would often sort of think, oh, they're just being naughty, you should just be stricter with them.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I was saying about because when we first went to Florida, I never finished that bit of the conversation, did I? We had these cards made up because you had a meltdown in it was in Fantasyland.
I remember it because I got given a cookie.
There was a cafe. What are the cafes in Fantasyland near that Dumbo ride? Like a burger place. Can't remember.
I don't know.
It's near It's a Small World anyway. But there was a table full of teenagers that looked distraught because you were having a big meltdown, and I had to basically just sort of take you outside to calm you down. But we gave them a card explaining the situation.
I remember a waiter gave me a cookie, and then we went to go see the parade.
But this is that generational thing you were talking about earlier, Simon.
Yeah.
Cheers. Oh, fuck. He's on the 100% proof stuff now. Yeah. When we got on the plane on the way back and you wouldn't sit in the non-window seat, even though it was your sister's turn, and your granddad was just saying, just make him sit there, just tell him he's got to sit there and that. But me and Mum both knew that there was just no point in trying to put our foot down on that.
Yeah.
He seemed to think that it was just, even though he knew what you were like, he didn't really understand that you can't just impose your will.
Generational thing. And I noticed that they've improved a lot to the point where I think they somehow think that they're more experts than you guys now on it. But
they're wrong.
It's weird.
It's a funny one, right? Because I'm estranged even from my parents.
Yeah.
And I had an email a few months ago, and one of the things in this email was my mum talking up the fact that Oh yeah, she must know. She kind of understands how hard it must be with an autistic child because she's seen autistic children at the school she works at.
Right.
And the problem with that kind of attitude, like number one, she's never met my son.
Yeah.
And she's probably never going to meet my son. Secondly, as you know, autism is a spectrum.
Yeah, every case is different, isn't it?
We were having this conversation the other day. I say that we was having a row the other day. Me and my wife. Sorry, I said that wrong. Me and my wife. She, because when she first thought that he could be autistic, quite early on, I turned around to her, and I remember doing it. I turned around to her quite flippantly when she said that, and said, "Look, if he is, he is, and we'll be able to deal with it. It's not a problem."
Yeah.
Because my view of autism at that time was very much, almost like Hollywood autism.
Yeah,
right.
Rain Man.
Yeah, it basically it heightens some senses. It gives you a few issues, but in some ways you're like a superhuman, and in other ways you might have struggles.
Yeah.
Now, my son, my case, he's non-verbal. He can barely say like a couple of words. Lots of stimming, and these are all things that I didn't really understand.
See, that's something that Theo used to do a lot more stimming when you were younger than I witness now. But maybe it just takes different forms now. I don't know.
I noticed I do sometimes still do it in private. Like if I'm watching a video and like I'll let my imagination run wild and that will like get me quite excited. No innuendo intended.
Nobody had thought that till you said that. But.
Yeah, well, I felt like I needed to say it. But I noticed, I'm not sure if it's more of a sort of, because I know...
You know what stimming's short for, don't you?
I know that other people with like anxiety do this, like shaking your leg up and down.
Yeah, dithering.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's a sort of me sort of constraining that to where it's less visible and that's because of social pressure, or it's just sort of something that's happened anyway.
So I do that. Do you two ever get like annoyed looks from your other halves, like if you just sat like sort of waving your foot around while you're watching TV, or?
I do the leg thing.
Yeah.
I do the tapping, and it's become worse. It's become more annoying because I normally work from home. I normally work upstairs above the living room. So,
right.
I will start doing it and not realise that I'm doing it until I kind of get shouted at from upstairs to stop because we've got wooden floors. So I don't move my foot around, but yeah, I'm definitely my leg will go, and I won't really notice. Yeah.
I do the thing, the finger thing, like you biting the end of my fingers and my nails.
Oh yes.
And I also get the breathing heavy, I believe. But watching TV, I'd go like
that. Is that not snoring?
Yeah, but Julie says I'm snoring when I'm watching TV, and she's like, "Stop breathing in!" She just slap me. Just say, "Stop it."
Nice.
Autism to domestic abuse. I like it.
So, this is why it's always good to have a separate chair or sofa, because then they can't abuse you without getting up first.
Also, they noticed you doing your annoying things less.
Depends what the view is like. Depends where the eye line ends up. But going back to what you were saying, like I do think that there is, especially when it comes to autism, I think there is a not just a generational thing, but also I think a lack of understanding in general. We're actually in the middle of a massive row at the moment with the nursery that my son's in, because of lots of things. But there seems to be a real, with certain members of the staff, there a real kind of lack of knowledge of what triggers my son and what he does and everything like that, and that's from people who are supposed to be
It's their job.
Yeah, well, I mean, not you can't just say like nursery staff in general necessarily, but if you've got people that are trained and are called Senkos, you expect them to have more of an understanding than just somebody who works in nursery. And actually, they appear to be the worst ones. Now, interestingly, they're the oldest ones as well. So maybe that kind of does revert back to the generational thing. But I think with autism in general, I think it is a lack of understanding and knowledge.
Well, they grew up in a different kind of. I mean, like we were talking earlier about the corporal punishment situation with the law and how that's changed quite quickly over the last few years, and it does seem completely reasonable now to view smacking a child as wrong, whereas it was a perfectly normal parenting technique not that long ago. So
I got hit when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I'd started school just after it was taken out of schools by a few years.
Yeah.
I not long missed it, but I had missed it. But yeah, it was certainly the done thing still when I was.
I don't actually know whether or not it was legal or not when I was at school, but I do remember people getting the slipper in front of the whole class. Like being caught. I mean, it was as much about the humiliation of being taken up in front of the whole class and bent over and whacked.
Like, that actually seems archaic to me now. I specifically remember.
It is.
But like, it seems like something that would be done in Victorian times, because I remember for like learning about the Victorian period, we went to this old school and sort of dressed up like Victorian kids to sort of see what it would have been like.
Was that not more that you were being sent up chimneys though to sweep them?
No, but it was. It was. I imagine would have been sort of treated as like rich kids, basically.
Yeah.
But the corporal punishment was actually just sort of acted out and played for laughs because it was just seen as so backwards and weird.
Yeah, I remember being on a residential school trip, and this was about the age of 10 or 11, and we were all in, like, there was a boys' dormitory and a girls' dormitory, and obviously, like, everybody was up, like, talking and making loads of noise way after bedtime when they shouldn't have been. And the teacher coming in and basically just picking 3 boys at random from the room, getting them up, giving bending them over, giving them the slipper.
That seems just so fucking weird.
It was at random as well, and they might have picked who they thought were the usual troublemakers, but it was as much as an example to everybody else as it was. They had no way of knowing who it was. It was probably all of us that were messing about.
I mean, it sounds like you've been treated like prisoners there.
Well, he's walking around.
We've got visual.
Do you know the number of times in the last couple of days I've opened my laptop and that face has been looking at me out of Facebook? Either with a sandwich in its gob.
Don't take
happy birthday for the other day, by the way.
Yeah, happy birthday.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Is that you?
Welcome to the club.
Is that 40? Is it 40 now, is it? No? 30?
36.
36. Oh, sorry, I've just insulted you.
I saw my daughter was telling everyone I was 63, so
okay.
She added a few more years. Corporal punishment in schools was weird, but I also think even the understanding of autism over the last 20, 30 years has really changed in general anyway. I think people are more aware of it. I really struggled at school, and I was never one of these naughty kids, but I never really did that well.
Yeah.
And it kind of came to a head when I went to uni, and I remember really struggling my 3rd year, and I sat down with my tutor one day because it seemed to be that I was always told I wasn't putting enough effort in, and the more effort I put in, the worse I got. The work I got the best grades on were ones I did at last minute.
Yeah. And
I sat there talking to her, and I said about that I was doing my dissertation, and I said, I'm really trying hard at it, but you're telling me it's not good. And she said, "Are you getting help with your dyslexia?" And I went, "I'm not dyslexic." And she went, "No, you are." And I went, I'm not. I was like 20, 21. I was like, "I'm not dyslexic." And she went, "No, you are." And I was like, okay. And it always kind of stuck with me. And it's only later years that I've realised it was probably not dyslexia, but autism. And the first time I met Craig, sorry, not the first time I met Craig, but the first time I spent time with Craig when we went to Florida, he went to me, "You are autistic, aren't you?" I went, I don't think I am. But the more that it's kind of come about, the more I think actually maybe I was. And
well, I've heard people saying before that when they meet you in real life that you're really sort of shy and quiet, like on first meeting.
Someone will tell you.
Yeah.
I didn't say a single word. He was there talking to Craig about how he listened to Universe After Dark and all this like really good stuff. And I just sat there. I just stood there like an absolute lemon.
Yeah.
Not really knowing where to look. I'm incredibly awkward when I meet new people.
Yeah.
Really am.
That's boding well for a few months' time.
I've already told everyone. I've told everyone that's going that if I don't give you eye contact at first, that's the reason why, because I'm not very confident, which is stupid considering how many podcasts I do and everything like that. Although I think that's why I enjoyed doing that medium rather than I don't mind doing video, but why podcasting is much easier for me, because one thing I learned when I was in my teenage years, when I started to kind of come out of my comfort zone a little bit and start to try and make friends, was almost pushing a persona.
Yeah.
So it was, I learned I can make people laugh.
Right.
And I use that, and even now, like, I get told off a lot because we'll be having a really serious conversation about something and I'll find a way of making a joke about that situation. Mm-hmm. And it's just it's a way of making me feel comfortable, because I kind of use that as a bit of a crutch.
Yeah.
But it's those kind of things. And my brother, my brother's a genius, and he's probably, he definitely is autistic. But because my brother was really smart at school, all the attention kind of went on him. So no matter what problems I was having, it was always kind of just like brushed under the carpet because it didn't matter.
Do you think?
And it's only like later on that I've kind of started to put things together. And
do you think it's better? I mean, like the way education system's going and everything, they have been trying to push everything more towards integration than it used to be. Because I used to drive taxis down south, and I remember a lot of the kids that would now be in mainstream schools would I'd be driving them over to a nearby town to a special school, and they were seen as badly behaved. But they were just dealt with by specialist sort of teachers, whereas now they try to integrate everyone. And it's okay, I think, as long as the training's there.
Yeah.
I think it really comes down to how you are and how you cope. So my son is going to be starting in a special school in September. Now, the original plan was that he was going to stay on at the school, the nursery he's in now, which is the school that my daughter goes to. And it's a very good school. It's a really good school. It ranks really highly. It's like the second best school in the borough. It's a really good school. But he would struggle because the pressure they put on the kids is much harder.
Yeah.
And he, because he's nonverbal and because he is so far behind in things like reading and writing, like he can't read at all. He can put words together with apps and stuff like that. We've got like a lot of educational apps, but he can't write anything. He can't really read anything. So he would struggle in a mainstream school. But for those kids that would struggle, but not to the same degree, then yes, we are seeing, I think, a lot more of getting the support in there, but allowing them to integrate more.
Yeah.
So I really think it does come down to personal circumstance. If I was, I mean, the thing is, I don't say I am autistic because I have not been told I am.
Yeah.
Getting a diagnosis as an adult is incredibly difficult, and I want one not because of being able to kind of tick that box and answer a lot of questions about myself, not for any kind of help that I can get because I've coped so far.
I think,
but
the point
just the recognition
is the way I've always sort of seen it is because a lot of people have this attitude of, well, everyone's on the spectrum, which sort of feels like they're sort of belittling people that are above that point where they're considered autistic. So like, well, I'm on the spectrum too, so, you know, where's my certificate? And I'm not saying that's what you're doing, but I sort of see it as it's to the point where it's actually creating a problem. Because the only point where I went somewhere to get diagnosed was, I think, when, you know, my behaviour was at a point where they were considering expelling me from the school I was at. That was the thing that prompted them.
Yeah, I mean, we were lucky in that, because, and it's all down to my wife, because of how far behind he was in kind of reaching milestones. We got a diagnosis when he was 2.5,
right? Because
they wanted to wait till 3, and she said, "Look, he's not gonna. The things you're expecting him to do by 3, he's clearly not going to do those.
Yeah.
We need to take it seriously. Like, first of all, it was like hearing tests and stuff like that. He passed all of those. It wasn't his hearing that was a problem, and we kept pushing and pushing, and eventually we did get that. And so for him, what we were able to do was kind of get the support, get key workers involved, and be able to kind of put together like strategies and everything like that.
Yeah.
I think the problem that you really kind of brought up there about people trying to tick a box and say, well, I'm autistic and everything like that, I think is completely valid. And it's hard because, you know, I know they're changing the law soon with regards to autism as being a condition that you can get a blue badge for,
right,
for argument's sake.
Yeah.
And when you start talking about financial benefits, and you start talking about things like a blue badge, you will have people that will try and, you know, if that's a box they can tick, and if that's something they can get something for, you know, there are certain people that will do that.
Yeah. And
the problem is, it's only a small percentage, but that small percentage then tarnishes it for anyone that really needs that. Yeah. And that's the kind of point I'm saying, is that I want to tick a box, but I don't want anything with that box.
Yeah,
I don't want to get.
You want an answer.
I think it's that sort of distinction. It's a distinction between mild autism, where, you know, it causes some difficulties, but it's not gonna.
Well, see, when you were getting your diagnosis, the guy that obviously we were in, it was family mental health, so he was asking questions of both me and Suzanne as well, and. You know, he commented that I showed a lot of the same traits, not to the same degree, but he certainly seemed to think that I had a certain tendency towards those autistic traits, which for me, again, it was the same thing. It's like I don't want any sort of special recognition for it, but it did help me to kind of think, well, yeah, I kind of understand a little bit about, when I look back at some of the things that happened when I was a kid now, it's like, well, that kind of makes more sense now, you know? You can kind of understand yourself better.
That's it. It's for me, it's trying to understand my journey and kind of how I've ended up and how I process things and how I do things. My daughter at the moment, she is really excelling at school. She's reading at a I can't remember if it was 9 or 10-year-old level. We got a report through the other day. She's like well above average in a reading compared to her classmates, and above for maths, which was a surprise to us because we're both useless with numbers. But we think she's autistic, and they won't give her a diagnosis because she's at school, and the problems that we see with her at home, she doesn't really do at school.
Yeah,
and the school, because she's at school, they need to be the ones that get put her up for seeing somebody, and she can cope. You know, unlike my son, she's able to talk and do all these things, but it's the way she handles information and the way that things affect her. Like at the moment, it's death is really affecting her. She's 6 years old. She shouldn't be thinking about it in the way that she is. She gets really bad anxiety. And there's other things as well. And, you know, what they always turn around as well with autism in kids is that it's much easier to diagnose it in boys because girls are easier to hide it.
Right.
And even though that our son's autistic, and even though that we've said, look, we wanted to be seen because of X, Y, and Z, they're like, no, if the school don't think there's a problem, then we won't. So because she's doing well in lessons and everything like that, they're quite happy.
That actually sounds a lot more like your older sister.
Right, yeah.
When she was at school, there were multiple problems at home with behaviour, but she was almost perfect at school. So there was no kind of, we used to be bringing up issues with them, and they'd be like, well, we don't know what you're talking about.
I definitely notice. I think it's that sort of thing of there's this attitude of boys will be boys being a lot more aggressive. So that's, it's quite easy to see when that oversteps. It's just, I think it's when you're autistic, because there's these unwritten social rules. And it feels like everyone else just somehow understands these without being told these, and it's just sort of...
but they don't. They just act as if they do.
Yeah, but it's really fucking confusing, because it's just sort of like, well, who told you this?
See, I see...
Why did they tell you this? It makes no sense.
He'll come home from school and there'll have been some kind of social situation gone on that most people would not deal with, but just kind of carry on not having dealt with it. But you'll sit there for an hour or two, a good hour or two, and actually talk through everybody's different kind of dynamics in that situation, and you'll understand it a lot better than most people end up doing as a result.
I feel like autism is quite often misconstrued as a lack of empathy. I think it's just sort of I'm probably more empathetic than most people that I know, but I misunderstand how to use that, I think.
Yeah, I think the confusion is that it's always discussed as a lack of, when actually I think it can be too much.
Yeah.
Again, we're talking about a spectrum, and I think both sides of that are there. So my daughter is one of her big things is friendships, and she's got one friend in particular who always wants to have my daughter's attention. And so if she's seen playing with somebody else and she's not playing that game, she will drag her away from it.
Yeah.
And she doesn't know how to do it, because she knows that if she doesn't do that, her friend will get really upset.
Yeah.
Even though because she knows her other friends will be okay, she goes along with it, but she finds it really hard to make that decision. She feels like she just has to, whatever she's pulled to do, she will do, and then worries about it later on.
Mm. How do you deal with the houses at the Halloween Horror Nights, Nick? Like the sensory input, because I'll tell you why. Because when we went,
that really affected me.
Theo went through his first house. We took an RAP tour, and he only made it through one house.
I still don't understand why you did this, because you know that I hate horror films.
Well,
and you still did this.
Nick will understand this. No, you know that. That we knew that there was a chance that you wouldn't deal with it very well, but part of being a parent of an autistic child is to try different things and push different things, just to give you the opportunity to kind of find out what you can tolerate and stuff like that. But you really didn't. It was Halloween. It was the Halloween house. So the first thing he got was Mike Myers in the face,
and it was just sort of the.
Was it Michael Myers?
I was expecting a sort of more story-based experience, and it was more just sort of, oh, here's a guy jumping out at you, and right behind you, there's another guy that's sort of all over the place, and my hands. I think a lot of it was the volume, shaking all over.
Yeah,
the place.
He panicked, and it was. I think it was the volume as well.
It's very
sudden,
they are very loud.
Yeah,
they are very loud.
I remember I went straight out, and that they have those harvest things with like the really tall pumpkins, and there was just sort of little snaps and weird things with them going on, and just from the sort of aftermath of going through Halloween and then going out there, it really freaked me out.
The chainsaws as well, they were getting you, weren't they?
Oh yeah, I was cooped up for the night in the Simpsons restaurant because I couldn't go anywhere near the people that were running after people with chainsaws.
Not on his own. Suzanne did go and sit with you, but and the staff were really good. You know, the tour guide kind of got us basically backstage so that we could get out safely afterwards. But
nice.
it was a learning experience.
I will never forgive you. Actually, to be honest, I will forgive you because you got me tickets to Hamilton. So that's your forgiveness.
That was what I was hoping I was getting for my birthday, and she couldn't get them.
That was like 18 months in advance. I got on the list for them. So.
Oh yeah. We recorded me going around Halloween Horror Nights.
Yeah.
When me and Craig went, where I discovered my new catchphrase, which was "No, thank you" every time that someone. It was very unintentional. Like,
do you imagine if you did that in an actual horror film, though? Just like
honestly,
the axe murderer coming after you. No, thank you, not today.
Yeah, it was so like it really wasn't. I didn't have a battle plan when we went, except for I knew that I didn't want to do the houses, which is really funny because I was asked to go with Craig purely to do Halloween Horror Nights, and I'm going this year with Craig and the others to do Halloween Horror Nights. When I do the houses for the first time, I really have to psych myself up to do them. I really don't like going into them. When I've done them once or twice, I'm not too bad because then in my head I've got roughly what's going to happen. It's the anticipation, and it really I hate it. I really hate it. So I was glad that it turned out to have some really funny audio to make it kind of worthwhile. But yeah, it's a funny one. I was talking with Ripley recently, and I told him a story about when I was young and I was playing Quasar. And I got picked up by somebody dressed up as a Doctor Who monster and picked me up on his arm and he ran around with me in the dark. And so I've always had a funny thing then, like since then about it. And that was like 25 years ago or something like that, probably longer. But yeah, I think the thing with Halloween Horror Nights is I think the houses are beautiful. But I do struggle to go around them until I'm comfortable in there because it's that anticipation of what's coming next. And I'm like it on a lot of rides as well. I have to really psych myself up.
Yeah.
Even, what's it called? Tower of Terror.
Yeah.
Now, I've done that ride
that one
numerous
me out
times.
A bit as well.
Yeah, I've done it numerous times. And so I know what the ride is. I know what's going to happen on the ride. But I struggled to get myself on it, and when me and Ryan went to Disneyland Paris a few months ago, and there was a group of us that went, they all love Tower of Terror, but I could psych myself up to go on it once, and then they were like, right, let's get straight back on it, and I was like, you know what, guys, I'm going to go and do something else.
Yeah,
I didn't want to tell them because I find it really hard to pump myself up for it because I enjoy it when I'm on it, but. It's the thought of going on it that
I think it's the sort of cinematic build-up because it's got like you go up to the ghost family in the elevator and you're not quite sure when it's going to drop, but it's got so much story build-up to it, and then
see that
if it was just you go up, you drop, and I would be fine with it, but it's the sort of experience of it.
That reminds me of the first time when I took Nienna on Rock and Roller Coaster in Florida, and it was the first big roller coaster she'd ever been on. How old would she have been then? About 9, 10 maybe? 8. Yeah. So she'd never been on a really big roller coaster before, and we'd been through the queue and she'd seen the launch several times, obviously.
Oh wait, was this in Paris?
No, this was Florida.
Oh, so she would have been 8 then.
Yeah. So we're sat in the car, and for some reason, you know, you've got that kind of bit where you sit there for a few seconds and then the traffic lights go and you get the countdown and you're off. For some reason, we sat there for a good 2 or 3 minutes waiting.
Oh, yeah.
And she started crying and like getting hysterical. And it's just that because you never know quite when it's going to happen. You know what's going to happen.
That reminds me of when we got stuck on 13 in Alton Towers.
Yeah, that was fun.
You were so cruel. Because we got.
Have you been on that?
Nice. I have.
You haven't.
There's a lift hill. We got stuck on that, and it was a good 10 minutes. And then later on in the ride, I expected it. There's just you go into this building and the tracks just stop, so you stop there, and I was just expecting it to go backwards because I knew that the ride goes backwards at some point.
Spoiler alert!
Yeah.
The floor actually drops from under you, so I was shitting myself because the ride had broken down earlier. And then I was just like, "Oh, this is meant to happen. Thanks for letting me know."
Well, yeah, but that's the excitement of things like
You're
that.
an arsehole.
Yeah. We haven't spoken much about the subject of the podcast.
No, we haven't. But
That was the subject.
Children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently.
Well, reminiscing of our childhoods.
Yeah. You've got to get up at 5:30, haven't you?
I'll be all right. Don't worry about it.
We need more beer. Are we going to carry on much longer? Or because if we are, I'm going to need more beer. If not, then I'll wait.
Are we wrapping up? Do you have more to say? What do you guys think?
I barely have anything to say at the best of times. As a person that's just spent ages talking. Children are great. I was one once.
Ooh.
Simon, was you a child once?
Yeah, I think so.
I still am.
Yeah.
Quickly, and I know. So we got now 2 people that aren't parents and 2 people that are. Just on that
we know of.
Someone once said to me, I remember I was working in Sainsbury's. I was probably early 20s.
Sorry,
sat in
Simon.
the smoking room, and someone came up to me and said, "Oh, how's your daughter?" And I went, "Don't have a daughter." I went, "Yeah." I'm like, "No," and then my mind just stopped for a minute. I thought, "Am I going to be going on Jeremy Carlson?" Is this their way of telling me that I've got a kid out there that I had no idea about? But it's still unfounded. So,
But I sort of think I never want to really have a child at this point because I don't know. It feels like a lot of pressure and.
Well, I was nearly 30.
Yeah, but I still don't feel like you've grown up. So
That's how I've survived it.
I guess.
it's a funny one because when I first got together with my wife, she didn't want children. Well, she didn't think she wanted children, and then that changed over time.
Mm.
And now, I do think, do I want to become a parent? Which is a bit late, really, thinking about it now. But I think sometimes it's circumstance, and I think sometimes it's just how you change as a person. I know people that have said exactly what you said there, Theo. Like, you can't see you wanting to do that, and then people that have said they've always wanted kids, and then later on gone, you know what, I don't think I can do it.
Yeah, I don't remember ever really thinking about it. When me and your mum,
That's hardly surprising.
No. Not in the way that it sounds. But when I met Suzanne, she already had a 6-year-old.
Right. Yeah.
And it wasn't something that I had to think, well, do I really want to take that on? It was just like, I knew that she had a kid from when we met. So it wasn't like something that was sprung on me. It was just part of the package, you know what I mean? But I don't remember before that actually thinking, do I or don't I want kids? It was just at that time, it just seemed to be
at that time you didn't have to deal with the early stages of complete frustration.
No, but it's in some ways it was more difficult coming into as not with no parental experience whatsoever, coming into a situation where somebody's already that age. Kind of trying to build a bond from nothing like that was really quite difficult.
I know, and I'm not sure how much of this was to do with because she said that she does have autistic tendencies, because her biological dad died in a motorbike accident.
Motorbike, yeah.
This is a really weird turn to take for something that's really fucking horrible.
It was a motorised penny farthing.
Christ.
They do have those in London.
Do
Really?
they?
do.
No.
Yeah.
Fucking hipsters.
I've not literally seen one in real life, but I know that there are versions of those that hipsters have. So yeah,
Oh, it's like bloody
of course there are.
What we're coming to.
Just be glad you have to see hipsters.
Yeah, motorbike crash. She was 10.
Yeah, and from what I understand, she was sort of.
That was hard.
Yeah, she did sort of vaguely accept you before then, but she really pushed hard and took it all out mainly on you.
At that point, well, what it was, I was at work. I was doing shifts, and I was at work. It was about 9:30 at night, and I got a phone call from Suzanne saying what had happened, and I had to get my boss to come back in to cover the rest of the shift so I could go home. And I came in and I tried to go and give her a hug, like, because you would. And it was just blank. There was no kind of, it was like she'd shut down, like completely just kind of, and at that point I knew I'm just going to have to step back. And we knew that there were going to be many years of repercussions after that, just because you don't come out of that kind of unaffected.
Yeah, I think it's much easier stepping into someone with a child when they are under one.
Yeah.
Or certainly not kind of talking level, because when you're talking about a 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old, whatever, they're their own person, they've got their own personality, they've got their own traits, they've got their own kind of ideas about things. Babies don't. To the point though where it must have been a couple of years ago, and this is how long it went on for, really, that I know I felt distanced. Was it a couple of years ago? Me and Suzanne had a big row at your grandparents', and it was about something to do with you, actually, because you'd refused to eat something, and one of us was trying to make you eat it, and the other one was saying no, he doesn't have to, and we'd fallen out about it. And I went off, and I was in tears because we'd had a big bust up about it. And she came along, Lorian, she's been on one of the videos. I don't know if you've seen it, so
Yeah, quite a few.
Yeah, and gave me a hug and asked if I was okay. And it was like that came completely out of the blue. This was like when she's about 20, and it was like completely, like, I had to thank her for it afterwards, because I'd never had that kind of concern from her before,
Yeah, I think that's because she really, specifically remember, I think she was about 17, and it was around about Christmas time, which is perfect for fucking arguments.
Oh, Jesus, yeah, I remember this.
Because I didn't, I think there was quite a bit of friction between me and her, because I think we're more similar than we'd probably like to admit, in that we like to be in control.
Do you?
I think I think we've both gotten better at this over the years, but like, are you saying that ironically?
No.
Oh, sorry. But no, I specifically remember I'd asked her, because she'd moved out at that point, or she'd been staying at a boyfriend's house for some time. So I'd asked her when she was coming home, because I didn't really understand what was going on, being a bit in the dark with that. Not sure how much of that was me being young and how much that was being autistic.
No, we were in the dark as well.
But so I'd asked her when she was coming home, and then just all hell broke loose.
Oh, that was she was 15, and she started spending time at a boyfriend's house.
15. I thought she was 17. I have no idea how time
works. This was probably before that happened then, but we were rightly concerned with her being only 15, that she was spending, nights out at her boyfriend's house. She hadn't been home for like 2 weeks. We've been talking for years about moving her out of the bedroom that she was in. No, what was it? Because there's 2 bedrooms, and there's like 2 girls and Theo. And you were sharing with your sister at the time.
Yeah,
and you were getting to the age where you needed to not be anymore. So we had to rearrange the bedrooms so that the 2 girls were together and you had a room on your own. But she just happened to come in come back for the first time in 2 weeks, just as we were moving all our stuff out of her bedroom, and it was like, what the hell's going on? I've just come. It's like, well, you've not been here for 2 weeks. You've known for years that this was going to happen. We thought, like, it's like, but obviously at that point, ever since then, she said that we were basically throwing her out.
He was throwing her out of her room.
Well,
into a different room.
Yeah.
Camera's just gone.
You guys are the only ones on camera now. I feel like this has been a really random episode.
Well, this is what happens when you ask me to come on. Like, that's what happens.
Fine.
It's been nearly 2 hours. Should we wrap up?
Do you have much else to say, anyone?
I need more beer. That's what I have
You've been saying that for like the last half an hour.
Oh, yeah, but I've got to start getting back on with my life tomorrow. It's been fucking mental for the last few weeks.
I'm on holiday, so I'm fine.
No, you've got all the housework to do.
I've done mine.
Once.
It's fine. This is the part where we just act.
Okay,
out
let's finish the
parenting.
podcast off. What do you mean act out parenting?
Me and Simon have to like step in now, and you know, Simon, you can be the dad, I'll be the mum.
Oh,
And,
Can we watch?
Maybe September.
No way, I'm going to get a ticket.
You'll have to fight Craig for that one. Apparently.
this has gone very weird. Should we wrap up before something illegal happens?
I'm going to leave an awkward silence deliberately.
Right. I have been Firebolt.
I've been the Orbiter.
I've been Simon.
I've been a pain in the ass.
Yeah, I suppose.
And this has been...
episode 39? 39.
Yeah, apparently.
Children.
It's not really been about children, has it?
It's been about, I mean, just basically
I think we're into the post-credits bit now.
It's sort of about parenting, isn't it?
Is that another episode?
Everything you do is about parenting, basically, if you're talking to me, isn't it? So we can spin this.
Maybe in your mind, some of the things I was doing last week might not have been about parenting.
I don't want to know.
No, you're not going to.
Anyhow, yeah, we already did the closer, didn't we?
Yeah. Thank you.
Outtakes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your contributions. And what's the next episode about?
You're very welcome.
Art, I believe.
Scraping the barrel now.
We're not.
We've done all the big guns, haven't we? We've done gender, we've done sex, we've done war, we've done.
Well, there's still quite a few big guns left.
Okay. Art.
One of the
Let's not start on that now.
next ones I think is culture and journalism, so they're pretty big.
Okay.
So we still got that.
That's pretty deep.
Yeah.
And art's pretty deep itself. It's just because you're not particularly artistic.
Well, apparently
I did that.
this is what we're doing now is art. Apparently.
Is it?
Apparently.
Wow. Okay.
It's expression, isn't it?
Yeah.
All of us here now do at least a podcast, so therefore that is a way of expression.
I feel like we're invading the next episode, but you could shit on a canvas and call it art.
Yeah, we're modern art.
People have.
Yeah. Let's leave that for the next episode.
And the point is, you're making a comment on what's considered art.
Look, you've started the next episode.
Whatever. Anyway.
Right. Shall I end the call then?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your contributions. And
a pleasure to see you all. Thank you very much.
Hopefully there will be more at some point.
Definitely.
Bye.
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 That was awkward.
We're still on mic.
Yeah, but not on Skype. They won't hear that till they listen
No.
to the episode. Do you know what though? What I was looking forward to, and they've fucked it. I was thinking that they would be on audio and we would be on camera. So I was thinking
You wanted to flip them off.
I was thinking we could without them knowing, but it's too late now. Call recorder is having a problem recording this call. Well, of course it is. It's finished.
This podcast is part of the After Dark Podcast Network.